It started the way most ordinary afternoons did, quiet, uneventful, almost forgettable. The heat outside was unbearable, one of those early August days where even the breeze gave up. I was home alone, scrolling through my phone, half watching the dust swirl through the sunlight in the living room, when the sound of tires crunching against our gravel driveway pulled my attention. I wasn't expecting anyone. My mom was supposed to be gone until the weekend, some wellness retreat upstate with her friends, and I was enjoying the silence that came with having the house to myself. But the knock on the door was real. Firm. Familiar. And when I opened it, there she was, Ava. My mom's best friend. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. Still the same dark eyes, same confident energy, same way she smiled like she knew something you didn't. But something was different. Or maybe it was me. I stood there, still holding the door, unsure what to say, and she stepped forward with a light laugh, brushing her sunglasses up onto her head. "Didn't expect a welcome committee," she said, looking me up and down, playful but warm. "Your mom didn't tell you I was coming?" I shook my head, stumbling over my words. "She's not here. She left yesterday." I thought you were going with her." Ava blinked. "That explains the look on your face. She asked me to stay here while she's away. Said the AC at my place broke and it's a furnace over there. Told her I'd crash in the guest room, help keep an eye on things." She smiled again, that smooth, effortless kind of smile that could disarm anyone. "Mind if I come in?" I stepped aside, letting her pass, and suddenly the house didn't feel as empty. She dropped her bag by the hallway and stretched, like she already belonged. The scent of her perfume, something citrusy and clean, hit me unexpectedly hard. I tried not to stare, but I did. I tried not to notice the curve of her body beneath her loose tank top, the way her skin shimmered slightly with sweat, the way she moved so confidently, so comfortably, but I noticed all of it. She caught me, just for a second. I don't know if it was the angle or the silence or the way my eyes lingered too long, but her smile shifted, something quieter, softer. "You've grown up," she said. "I almost didn't recognize you." I forced a laugh, nervous and unsure what to do with my hands. "Yeah, I guess it's been a while." She nodded, walking into the kitchen like it was still hers. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "So, what have you been up to, troublemaker?" Her teasing tone put me at ease, but only a little. I told her about school, friends, the boring summer. She listened, really listened, leaning in, asking questions, laughing when I was funny, pausing when I wasn't. It felt good. Too good. And strange. At some point, she sat down on the couch, patting the spot beside her. I sat, pretending not to be affected by the way her bare leg brushed against mine. "You know," she said after a while, "when you were little, you used to follow me around like a shadow. Always asking me questions. Always staring at me like I had all the answers." I looked away, suddenly embarrassed. I was a kid. She hummed, her eyes still on me. "But you're not anymore." The air shifted. Heavier. Warmer. I could feel her eyes on me, studying me like I was something new. Something she hadn't considered before. And part of me wanted to get up, to break the moment, to turn on the TV or open a window or do anything else, but I didn't. I stayed. Because her presence made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt before. Like I wasn't just the daughter of her friend. Like I was something else. She leaned back, stretching her arms above her head, letting out a soft sigh. Her tank top rose just slightly, and I had to force my gaze away. You okay? She asked, suddenly looking at me again. I nodded, quickly. Yeah. Just hot. She smiled knowingly. Yeah. Summer'll do that. She didn't say anything else, and neither did I. We sat there in the thick silence, the hum of the fan the only sound between us. I could feel her beside me, her heat, her breath, her energy. It was nothing. But it wasn't. And when she stood up and said she was going to shower, I nodded too quickly again, not trusting my voice. She walked past, her fingers grazing my shoulder lightly. Whether it was accidental or intentional, I didn't know. But the shiver it left behind stayed long after she disappeared down the hall. I couldn't stop thinking about that touch. The way her fingers had brushed my skin, barely there, just a whisper, but enough to burn itself into me. The door to the guest bathroom closed with a soft click, and I sat frozen on the couch, still pretending I was watching the TV I hadn't turned on. The sound of the shower starting, water hitting tile, soft echoes drifting down the hall, made my throat tighten. I was trying not to let my mind wander. Trying not to picture her in there, skin glistening, hair wet and loose, body curved and bare under the water. But I did. I tried not to want what I shouldn't, but I did. And I hated how much I liked the wanting. I pulled my knees up to my chest, arms wrapped around them, feeling suddenly like a stranger in my own home. It was wrong. Wasn't it? She was my mom's best friend. She'd known me since I was a child. But the way she looked at me, the way her smile lingered too long, it didn't feel motherly. It didn't feel innocent. And part of me didn't want it to be. When she finally came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel with steam trailing behind her, I made the mistake of looking up. Just a glance. That's all it took. Her hair was damp, curling slightly at the ends, and her skin looked impossibly soft. Her eyes caught mine. She smiled again. But this one was different, slower, quieter, like we both knew something we weren't saying. Didn't mean to steal all the hot water, she teased, stepping past me. I shook my head quickly. It's fine. I haven't showered yet. Then you better hurry. Before it turns cold on you. I nodded, standing up a little too fast, heart beating in my throat. As I passed her, she didn't move away. She stood there, towel clutched casually, her eyes on mine. Her voice lowered, soft and smooth. Bathroom's all yours. I swallowed hard. Thanks. And then I was in the bathroom with the door locked, my back against the wood, trying to slow my breathing. Her scent still lingered. Her presence clung to the air. I turned on the water and stepped in, letting it run hotter than I normally could handle, hoping it would clear the thoughts crowding my head. But it didn't. All I could see was her. Her curves. Her smile. Her eyes. When I finally came out, wrapped in my own towel, she was already in the kitchen again, dressed now in a loose tank top and short cotton shorts, bare feet on the tile floor, sipping from a wine glass. She looked up when she heard me, raising the glass slightly. I opened a bottle. Hope that's okay. I nodded. Of course. Want some? I hesitated. She tilted her head, watching me. You're old enough, aren't you? I nodded again. Yeah. I mean, I've had wine before. Not a lot, though. She smiled and poured a second glass, sliding it across the counter toward me. I took it carefully, fingers brushing hers again, that same electric tingle running up my spine. We stood there for a moment, sipping quietly, the tension between us thick like honey. She looked at me over the rim of her glass, something unreadable in her expression. "You've changed a lot," she said finally. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. "In a good way?" Her lips curved. "Very good." I didn't know what to say to that, so I looked down into my glass like it had answers. She reached out gently, her fingers brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. "You still get that shy look when someone compliments you." "It's cute." My breath caught. Her hand lingered, just a second too long. I looked up, right into her eyes, and whatever was passing between us in that moment, it wasn't innocent anymore. But still, neither of us said it out loud. Not yet. Instead, she broke the silence with a quiet laugh and turned away, rinsing her glass in the sink. "Come watch a movie with me?" Her voice was light, like nothing had happened. Like my heart wasn't pounding in my ears. I followed her to the couch again, and this time when I sat, she sat closer. Our thighs touched. Neither of us moved away. The movie played in the background, something romantic and quiet, but I didn't really watch it. All I could focus on was the way her fingers were resting so close to mine on the cushion. The way her knee pressed against mine. The way she leaned into me just slightly, like a magnetic pull neither of us wanted to break. I could feel her breath when she laughed. I could smell her skin. And when she reached for the blanket and draped it over both our legs, she didn't ask. She just did it. Like this was normal. Like this was okay. And maybe, it was. Maybe we were just two people, quietly orbiting around something neither of us had planned for. Something we were still too afraid to name. I didn't know how long we sat there like that, tucked beneath the same blanket, pretending to watch the movie while saying nothing at all. The silence between us was thick, charged with everything we weren't saying but both clearly feeling. I could sense her beside me with every breath, every slight movement of her fingers, every shift of her legs. She wasn't touching me, not exactly, but her body was close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin radiating through the fabric. And then, it happened. Slowly, like it had always meant to. Her hand, still resting on the cushion between us, shifted slightly. Her pinky brushed against mine. Not an accident. I didn't flinch. I didn't move away. Instead, I let mine stay there, right next to hers, until the tips of our fingers overlapped, light as air, trembling with anticipation. My heart was racing, thudding against my ribs so loudly I was sure she could hear it. But she didn't say a word. Her eyes stayed on the screen. She simply moved her hand a little more until our fingers were laced, gentle, slow, deliberate. I felt a shiver run through me. Not from fear. From something else. From something I couldn't explain, something warm and terrifying and beautiful all at once. Her thumb traced lightly over my knuckle, and I held my breath. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I could feel what she was trying to say without saying it. Minutes passed like that. Her hand holding mine. The quiet movie still playing. The air between us growing denser with unspoken things. When the credits finally rolled, neither of us moved. The room was dim, the only light coming from the soft glow of the television. I turned my head slightly, and she was already looking at me. Her eyes weren't teasing anymore. They were serious, intense, searching. She didn't let go of my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. I nodded, my voice catching in my throat. "Yeah. I think so." "This isn't confusing?" she asked, but there was something deeper in her tone, like she already knew the answer. I swallowed hard. "It is. But it's also not." Her eyes dropped to our hands, still joined. Then she looked back at me, and something in her gaze shifted. She leaned in, just a little, her face close enough that I could feel her breath on my lips. "If you want me to stop, just say so," she said. "And I will." I didn't say anything. I didn't stop her. My silence was permission. And so, she closed the space between us. Her lips brushed mine, soft at first, almost unsure. It wasn't a kiss meant to shock, it was a question, a gentle test. When I didn't pull away, when I tilted my head just slightly into her, she kissed me again, deeper this time, her hand coming up to cradle the side of my face. My entire body went still. Everything disappeared, the movie, the couch, the house, until there was only her, only the warmth of her mouth on mine, the way her touch made my skin ache. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing a little heavier. Her forehead rested against mine. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered. But her hand was still on my cheek. Our legs still touched. Our fingers still intertwined. "Then why does it feel like we both wanted it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes dark with something I couldn't name. "Because we did," she said. "And that's what scares me." I could feel the fear in her now, not of me, but of what this meant. Of what it could become. Of how wrong it could look to the outside world. She was older. She was my mom's best friend. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. And the way she was looking at me now told me it wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was something deeper. Something real. Should I be scared too? I asked quietly. Her fingers tightened around mine. "No," she said. "But we have to be careful." I nodded. She leaned back against the couch, her body close to mine, but her lips no longer searching. "Not for now. We'll take it slow," she murmured. "Only what you're ready for." I appreciated that. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew it wasn't just lust. It wasn't just curiosity. There was something underneath all of it, something tender and complicated and painfully beautiful. And as I leaned against her shoulder, letting my head rest there, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. Wanted. Seen. Even in the stillness, even in the silence, she held me like she understood. Like she'd been waiting for this, too. The next morning, everything felt quieter. Not in the usual lazy way mornings tend to feel, but in that strange, delicate way where something has changed and neither person wants to be the first to say it out loud. I woke up early, earlier than usual, and for a moment I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing. Maybe Ava had never kissed me. Maybe we hadn't held hands under the blanket. Maybe it was just my imagination, warped by heat and loneliness. But when I walked into the kitchen, she was already there, leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee in her hand. She looked up and smiled softly, and in that instant, I knew it had all been real. That same look was still in her eyes. Warm, knowing, careful. "Morning," she said, voice gentle. I nodded, trying to hide the nerves that had returned overnight. "Morning." I went to the fridge, pulled out the orange juice, and poured myself a glass just to keep my hands busy. She watched me for a second longer than normal, then turned her gaze back to the window, taking another sip. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it just felt heavy. Charged. Like there was something floating in the air between us we weren't ready to name again. I sat across from her at the table, the cold glass sweating between my fingers. She finally broke the silence. "Did you sleep okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. You?" "Eventually," she said, smiling to herself. Then she looked at me again, her tone more serious. Are you okay with what happened? I swallowed, meeting her eyes. I am. Are you? Her expression faltered for just a second, like she wasn't sure how much to say. Yes, she said finally. But I've been thinking about it all night. Not because I regret it, but because I don't. That hit me harder than I expected. I felt something flutter in my chest, fear, maybe, or hope, or both. I don't either, I said quietly. She reached out, brushed her fingertips across the back of my hand. We need to be smart, she added. Your mom, she'd never understand. That truth sat like a stone in the middle of the table between us. Heavy. Immovable. I nodded slowly. I know. She gave my hand one last squeeze before pulling hers back, as if reminding herself of the boundaries we still had to pretend existed. The rest of the morning passed in soft conversation and stolen glances. It was strange, how quickly everything felt different without looking different at all. She wasn't touching me, not openly, but her presence felt closer than ever. Like there was a thread between us now, invisible but strong, pulling us together even as we pretended nothing had changed. Later that afternoon, I was in my room reading when there was a soft knock at the door. I looked up, and she peeked her head in. Hey, she said. I'm going to the store. Want to come? I nodded, standing up a little too fast. Sure. Let me grab my shoes. The car ride was normal. At least, on the surface. We talked about groceries, the heat, small things. But in between the laughter and casual remarks, I felt the tension humming just under the surface. Her hand brushed mine when we both reached for the air conditioner at the same time. Her laugh lingered a little too long when I told a joke. And when she pulled into a parking space and turned off the engine, she looked at me like she was about to say something more. But she didn't. Not yet. In the store, everything felt strangely intimate. We moved in sync, weaving through aisles, choosing what we liked, making each other laugh over silly things. To anyone else, we looked like family, or maybe friends. But every time her hand rested on the small of my back, or our eyes met across the freezer section, it felt like we were sharing a secret. One we couldn't afford to let slip. On the way back, she drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the console between us. Not touching, but close. So close. The silence was comfortable now, filled with something deeper. When we got home, I helped her unpack the bags, and for a while we were just normal. Until I dropped a jar of sauce and it shattered across the floor. She rushed over, concern in her eyes, and when I knelt to clean it, I felt her hand brush my shoulder. I looked up. She was already looking down at me. And something passed between us again. That same pull. That same quiet question. I stood slowly, her eyes following me the entire way up. The air felt thick again. We didn't say anything. Not then. But as she moved past me, her fingers slid across mine, just for a second. A small spark. A silent promise. And it was enough to leave me standing there, surrounded by broken glass and tomato sauce, heart pounding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. That night, the air inside the house felt different. Heavier. Like every breath was being filtered through something invisible but undeniable. I couldn't stop replaying the day in my head, the way her hand had brushed mine in the car, the glances in the store, the way she looked at me when I was crouched on the floor, completely exposed. None of it felt accidental. None of it felt platonic. And yet we hadn't crossed any lines again. Not really. But the space between us was closing inch by inch, and I could feel it in my chest like gravity. After dinner, we sat on the back porch, the kind of quiet settling over us that didn't need filling. The sky was fading into a deep blue, stars slowly pushing through the haze, and crickets filled the silence. She handed me a glass of wine, something sweeter than before, and I took it with a quiet, "Thank you." Our fingers didn't touch this time. Maybe that's what made me miss it more. She sat beside me on the porch swing, her legs crossed, one hand resting in her lap, the other lightly gripping the armrest. I could see the curve of her collarbone, the rise and fall of her breath, the way the soft outdoor light made her skin glow. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, swirling the wine in my glass. "Just thinking." "About?" I hesitated. "You." She didn't say anything at first. Just exhaled slowly, then looked down at her own glass. "Same." I looked over at her, and she finally met my eyes. There was something raw there, something unguarded. "You scare me a little," she admitted. "Not because you've done anything wrong. But because, being around you makes me forget all the reasons I'm supposed to stay away." Her honesty stunned me. It felt like something I wasn't supposed to hear. Like a secret too delicate to hold. "I don't want you to stay away," I said, my voice barely audible. She turned her body slightly toward me, her expression softening. "I don't want that either. But this, whatever this is, it's complicated. You know that, right?" I nodded. "It doesn't feel wrong." "No," she agreed. "That's the problem. It feels right. Too right." She reached out then, almost as if she couldn't help it, her fingers grazing mine again. Not holding. Just touching. Testing the space between us. "You make me feel seen," I said suddenly, not even sure where the words were coming from. "Like I'm not just a girl growing up in someone else's shadow. You actually look at me. Like I'm real." Her expression shifted, something tender blooming in her eyes. "You are real. You've always been real. I just think maybe I'm only seeing you clearly now." I turned my hand over, letting her fingers slide into mine. She didn't pull away. The swing creaked softly beneath us, swaying with the warm night breeze. "I used to think you were untouchable," I whispered. "Like you belonged to this world I couldn't reach. But now, it's different." She leaned in, just slightly, her breath brushing my cheek. "Everything is different now," she murmured. There was a pause. The kind that holds everything. Want. Fear. Hope. Her thumb moved across my palm, slow and warm. I closed my eyes, letting the feeling wash over me, letting myself fall into that quiet space where nothing else mattered. Just us. Just now. She didn't kiss me this time. She didn't need to. Her hand in mine said more than words could. When we finally stood and went back inside, the house felt softer, like it had absorbed something sacred. We didn't talk about what just happened. We didn't try to define it. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop feeling her touch in my hand, couldn't stop hearing the way she said I scare her. Because deep down, I knew what she meant. I was starting to scare myself too, with how much I wanted her. How much I already needed her. How easily I could see myself falling completely. And how impossible it felt to stop. The next morning brought with it a quiet tension that settled in the walls like humidity, thick and impossible to ignore. The sky outside was a muted gray, the air heavy with the promise of rain. It matched the weight in my chest. Ava wasn't in the kitchen when I woke up. Her coffee mug was still sitting on the counter, clean and unused. something about that unsettled me. I wandered through the house, calling her name softly, but she didn't answer. Her bedroom door was cracked open, the bed untouched, and for a second my stomach dropped, until I saw her out on the back deck, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself despite the warmth. She didn't turn when I slid the door open. I stepped out slowly, not wanting to startle her, unsure of what version of her I would find this morning. She spoke before I could. I couldn't sleep. Her voice was low, almost hoarse. I kept thinking about last night. About all of this. I moved beside her, standing close but not touching. I thought about it too. I feel like I'm losing myself, she admitted, her gaze fixed on the overcast sky. Like I'm being pulled into something I can't control. I swallowed the knot rising in my throat. Do you want to stop? She looked at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes searched mine for something. I wasn't sure if it was strength or an excuse or maybe just clarity. No, she said finally, her voice cracking just a little. But I don't know how to move forward either. I'm not supposed to feel this way about you. The honesty stung, but I understood it. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. The kind that creeps in when something feels too big, too real, too irreversible. Then don't think about what you're supposed to feel, I said. Just feel it. Let it be what it is. She closed her eyes, exhaled deeply, and nodded. That's easier when you're not looking at me like that. Like what? Like you already love me. The silence that followed her words hit me like a wave. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about it, I had. Over and over again. But hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. I didn't deny it. Couldn't. Because maybe I did love her. Or maybe I was on my way there, falling faster than I ever thought possible. Maybe I do, I whispered. She opened her eyes and turned toward me. For a long moment, she just stared. And then she reached out, her hands finding my face, thumbs resting gently against my cheeks. She leaned in and kissed me. This time, it wasn't careful. It wasn't cautious or unsure. It was real. Deep. A kiss that said everything we'd been holding back. Her hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer. Mine slid around her back, fingers pressing into her skin like I was afraid she'd vanish if I let go. When we pulled apart, both of us were breathless. The sky above us rumbled faintly, distant thunder rolling in the clouds. We can't undo this now, she said, her voice unsteady. I don't want to, I replied. She rested her forehead against mine, and we stayed like that for a long time, the storm creeping closer, the wind starting to swirl around us. Eventually, we went inside, locking the world out behind the sliding glass door. She took my hand and led me to the couch again. We didn't speak. We just sat, wrapped in the same blanket, bodies pressed together as the first drops of rain began to fall. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was something fuller, something more dangerous. It was trust. It was vulnerability. It was the quiet realization that nothing about this was temporary. She traced small circles on my arm as I leaned into her. The rain grew louder, hitting the roof in rhythmic waves. The storm outside mirrored the one inside us, wild and unrelenting and too far gone to stop now. And in that moment, I didn't care about right or wrong, about what the world would think, about what consequences might come. All I knew was that she was here. With me. And that whatever this was between us, it was no longer a maybe. It was real. The rain didn't stop for hours. It poured steadily, drumming against the windows, sliding down the glass in long streaks that blurred the outside world. Inside, everything felt suspended, like time had paused just for us. Ava stayed close, her arm resting around my shoulder, her fingers occasionally moving through my hair, gently, rhythmically, like she didn't even realize she was doing it. We said very little. Words weren't necessary anymore. It was all in the touches, the looks, the small movements that carried the weight of everything unspoken. Every time I looked at her, I felt it again, that strange, dizzying mix of comfort and danger. I knew we were balancing on a razor-thin line, but I didn't care. Not then. All I could think about was how right it felt to be near her, how natural it was to lean into her warmth, how my body no longer hesitated to reach for hers. At some point, I drifted off, my head on her lap, her hands still in my hair. I must have been asleep for a while, because when I opened my eyes, the sky had darkened further. The storm was still raging, but it was quieter now, more like a whisper than a scream. Ava was looking down at me when I woke, her expression soft and unreadable. She didn't say anything, just traced her thumb lightly over my forehead. I sat up slowly, stretching, suddenly aware again of how close we were, how intimate this all had become. She moved with me, not pulling away, just watching. "You fell asleep," she said. "I didn't want to move you." "I'm glad you didn't," I said, my voice still heavy with sleep. She smiled faintly but didn't respond. Instead, she stood and walked toward the kitchen, pouring herself another glass of wine. I watched her from the couch, the way her movements were so fluid, effortless, like she'd always belonged in this house, in my life. I followed her into the kitchen, standing across from her at the counter. She looked up when I approached, and for a second, it felt like something was different. Her smile was a little tighter. Her eyes a little less open. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but it was too fast. "Yeah. Just thinking again." I stepped closer, searching her face. "Tell me." She hesitated, then let out a breath. "I keep wondering what happens after this. After your mom comes back. After summer ends. What does this look like then?" The question made my stomach twist, because I'd thought about it too, what this was, what it could turn into, what it wasn't allowed to become. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I don't want it to end here." She reached for my hand, holding it gently. "Neither do I. But it gets harder after this. It's not just us in this. There are people who won't understand. People who'll judge. People who'll be hurt." She didn't say my mother's name, but we both heard it in the silence. I squeezed her hand, grounding her. "We can figure it out. One day at a time." She looked at me, and for a second I saw all the fear again, the fear of losing everything, of being seen as something she never meant to be. But under that fear, there was love. Real love. And it was terrifying. That night, we didn't touch each other the way we had before. We didn't kiss. We didn't curl up on the couch or fall asleep in each other's arms. We gave each other space, but it wasn't distance. It was reverence. We sat near each other, close enough to feel the other's presence, far enough to respect the storm inside both of us. I saw her staring out the window again, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. She looked like she was waiting, for the storm to end, for a sign, for something that would make this all easier. I walked up behind her and wrapped my arms gently around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. She leaned back into me without a word. We stood like that for a long time, just listening to the rain. And in the quiet, I knew something had shifted. Not broken. Not disappeared. But grown heavier. We were no longer just two people caught in a moment. We were two people carrying a truth. One that had no easy path forward. But still, we held it. Together. The storm passed overnight. I woke to soft sunlight bleeding through the curtains, the world outside washed clean, the sky impossibly blue. It felt like a reset, like something had been released while we slept. I lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, letting my thoughts drift through everything that had happened. The closeness. The kisses. The fears. The quiet understanding that whatever had formed between us couldn't be undone now. I got up slowly and padded into the hallway, listening for any sound. I found her in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs like it was the most normal morning in the world. She glanced up when she saw me and smiled, small, sleepy, but real. "Morning," she said. "Coffee?" I nodded, accepting the mug she handed me. Our fingers touched briefly, just enough to feel familiar. We sat at the table in the silence of a new day, the air lighter than before but still fragile. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes flicking between me and the window. "I need to leave today," she said finally. The words hit harder than I expected. I knew it was coming. She couldn't stay here forever. My mom would be back tomorrow. But hearing it out loud brought a hollow ache to my chest. "I know," I said, trying not to let the emotion show. "Doesn't make it easier, though." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Last night, when we didn't touch, when we just sat there, it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because I needed to remember what this is. How much it means. Because if I forget, I'll ruin it." I squeezed her hand. "You haven't ruined anything." She gave me a look, one full of 100 emotions I couldn't name. "Not yet." We packed her things together. Folded her clothes. Gathered her scattered belongings from the living room and bathroom. Each item we picked up felt like a tiny goodbye. And when she zipped her bag shut, I felt it in my chest, the weight of goodbye sitting there, quiet and cruel. She walked me to the front door. Her car waited in the driveway, the same way it had arrived days ago, back when everything felt different. Back when this was still impossible. She turned to face me. "I don't know what happens next," she said softly. "I don't either. But I know this wasn't nothing." It wasn't. We stood there, neither of us sure how to say goodbye to something that wasn't supposed to happen but somehow still mattered more than anything else. She leaned in and kissed me, slow and steady, a goodbye and a promise wrapped into one. When she pulled back, her eyes were glossy, but she didn't cry. "Be safe," she whispered. "You too." I watched her drive away, standing barefoot on the porch as her car disappeared down the street. The silence she left behind was deafening. But it wasn't empty. It was filled with memory. With moments that had changed me. Moments I'd carry. Later that day, I cleaned up. Stripped the guest bed. Folded the blanket we'd shared. Picked up the wine glasses from the porch. I moved slowly, like I was afraid of erasing her by accident. That night, I lay in bed staring at the same ceiling, wondering if she was lying under one too, thinking of me. I didn't know if she'd reach out. If we'd see each other again. But I knew that whatever this was, whatever name it finally earned, it had left a mark. She had left a mark. On me. On this house. On this version of myself I hadn't met until she walked through that door. Sometimes love doesn't come in loud declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes it shows up quietly, unexpectedly, and refuses to leave the same way it came. It stays. Even when the person doesn't. Even when the moment ends. And if you're lucky, it teaches you how to see yourself through someone else's eyes. The truest version. The most terrifying and beautiful one. That was her gift to me. She saw me. And I'll never be the same. That if this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt invisible until someone looked at you like you mattered, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more faceless love stories that remind us how human we all really are.